All right, now we have a very special thing which I've already stepped on her toes today by doing one part of the service, so I'm sorry about that. But Doris is going to do her Mother's Day, and I believe most of it comes from the Unitarian side.
So for years, I keep dropping hints to the program committee. I want to do something on Mother's Day about Julia Ward Howe. So that's why it's Mother's Day the Unitarian Way, or the UU Way, whatever you want to say. This is on. So Julia Ward Howe started Mother's Day. She was a Unitarian, a radical, an activist. She was a published essayist and a poet. She was of the wealthy elite that you often hear people refer to as the Boston Brahmins back in the day. You know, Thoreau and all those wonderful historical people. She was very, very well educated. She spoke 7 languages. She belonged to what was called the Radical Club, which was a group of transcendentalists and activists. She, her husband, I can't remember his first name, Howe is his last name, was also an activist. He was very involved in the reform of children's education, especially children's institutional education for children with disabilities. This is back in the mid-1800s. Something that I found out that isn't often shared is she had gorgeous red hair, she had blue eyes, and that she's said to have a beautiful speaking voice. So she was a very fiery speaker, and she went around, trying to reform things. I'll tell you all the different things. So she grew up as a Lutheran. As an adult, she became a Unitarian, and she was a very great admirer, for those of you who follow UU history, she was a great admirer and reform, collaborator with Theodore Parker, who was a famous Unitarian minister. She was so admiring of him that she actually named her first child Theodore Parker Howe. She had 6 children in her life. Later in her life, I'm sorry to report, she did change churches. She went over to the Church of the Disciples, and she said that she did that because it was more soothing. And Theodore Parker's very fiery sermons, go out of here and get busy doing, when she got older, she wanted to be soothed. So she's most well known. In 1861, in response to the Civil War, she and a group of people had gone to watch a battle in their carriages, kind of like going to a picnic. Unfortunately, it was near D.C. The battle went awry, and she and all the carriages and the soldiers had to flee and retreat together. So during the night, she woke up and she wrote a song that you all know called the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory, and she was, just on fire about the unfortunate consequences of war. She did get paid $5 for that song. She was a very ardent abolitionist. That was her, another one of her great causes. And in 1870, this is after the Civil War, there was another war breaking out in Europe, and there was talk of sending American soldiers over there. It was called the Franco-Prussian War. I can't explain too much about that. I don't know my war history very well. But she wrote this Mother's Day proclamation, a very passionate appeal to women, and I'm going to read it to you. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether our baptism be of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands will not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, the women of one country, will be too tender of the women of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of, and you can just imagine her like with her red hair and, From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, and each bearing after her own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. So after the Proclamation, which was widely shared, in 1872, she proposed that June 2nd be annually celebrated as Mother's Peace Day. That was the original name of Mother's Day, Mother's Peace Day. And those celebrations, they started kind of in some of the big cities and spread all over and around the world too. And they went on from 1872 until 1913. Mother's Peace Day was celebrated in this country. She also organized what was called the Women's Peace Crusade. So in that proclamation, she was saying women should gather. And so the Women's Peace Crusade were these annual meetings, mostly in the United States, but also in other countries, of women coming together to talk about how to stop war. She then got very involved in the women's suffrage movement and began working with all the famous, women who worked for the women's right to vote. She was right in there with them, and she was that kind of leader. I know you know people like this who get themselves elected, Robert, into or leading organizations. It's sort of a quiet, she wasn't like, Katie Stanton or something, but she, for 20, 30 years, was serving as the elected president or the initial beginner or whatever of all these different women's organizations for suffrage as well as the Women's Peace Crusade. In 1907, she was the first woman elected to the American Academy of Arts and Letters. She tirelessly continued to champion the cause of an official national celebration of Mother's Peace Day and declaring a national holiday. Her idea did spread and was later replaced by what is now called Mother's Day, which is celebrated in May. In 1907, a woman by the name of Anna Jarvis, who was the daughter of one of her friends, one of her contemporaries, began really lobbying for what she called Mother's Day. So she kind of was carrying it forward, but she also claims that she started it. So there's all that, how it gets political. The YMCA got involved in advocating for a National Mother's Day, the Fraternal Order of Eagles. There was a coach in Indiana that claims that he invented it. Everybody was getting into it. In 1914, Woodrow Wilson named the second Monday in May Mother's Day. Anna Jarvis then began speaking out against the commercialization of Mother's Day. She didn't mean for it to be all about buying flowers and, cards. In 1934, Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to issue a Mother's Day stamp, but Anna Jarvis wouldn't let him put the words Mother's Day on it because it belonged to her. And so it was instead a we honor the mothers of our country kind of stamp. Now Mother's Day is the most heavily attended Sunday of the year in most churches in the United States after Christmas and Easter, which are the two leaders. So Mother's Day is third in attendance. It's become a kind of a hallmark holiday. We spend about $15 billion a year on Mother's Day. A lot of that is flowers. One thing that's interesting, the UUs, some of the big congregations around the country, have begun celebrating an alternative, which they call a Mama's Day service. And Mama's Day is a part of an initiative by a national group called Strong Families, and it's part of their Forward Together campaign. and that emphasizes diversity of mothers, diversities of families, and also the different kinds of families that exist out there. So a really kind of open idea about Mama's Day. So now that's your mini homily. Now we have these two mics set up so that we moved everything so you could get to them very easily. And what we would like to do, this is something I force on my family and friends regularly. At our house, we call it the one-word toast, which we say at holidays and special dinners. So we're going to kind of do a one-word toast. And so the mics are here so that you can kind of get up and stand in line. Since you only are going to say one word, I know there's a lot of professors here, maybe 2 words. Try to control yourselves. So I'm going to ask for 4 different responses. So you'll have 4 chances to go to the mic, or you can go up there 4 times. I think that's great. So it'll just be a real quick, a person on this side will say a word, then a person, there'll be a little line, and, we'll kind of hear a little word poem in response to the question. So see if we can do this. Let's not do that whole thing where we sit and watch the person walk to the mic, because if it's only one word, that's not going to work. All right, so here's the first word I want you to think about. Share one word that means mother to you. Okay, start your lines. One word. I'll tell you when to start. You can take the mic out of the stand to adjust for height if you want.
It's good height for me.
Are these the only people that have a word for mother? Come on now. Get in the game. We need some people on the north side. All right. Okay. Let's hear the word poem that we're going to hear.
Strong.
Caring.
Nurturing.
Loving.
Gracious. Can I say the same word?
Sure.
Caring.
Compassionate.
Female.
Supportive.
Beautiful.
Work.
Yeah.
Protective.
Okay, here's the next prompt. Let's see what we get, what kind of word poem we get for this one. One word, or 2, that describes a mother you know or have known. Make your lines. Everybody gets a chance. Look, it's the same people. A word that describes a mother you know or have known.
Sacrifice.
Crazy.
Kind.
Smart.
Always there.
Gentle.
Listen.
Funny.
Creative.
Flamboyant.
Tough.
Wow, I wish I would have written all that down. Of course, at my house, we always have wine for this, like every word. Cheers, yeah, that's a good word. We even make the, yeah, it would. We even make the 2-year-olds, and we always stall out at the 2-year-olds. They're like, no, I know how to do it. Okay, share one word or 2 that expresses your own experience of being a mother. And we're using that as a very open term. It doesn't have to be biology, right? So a word or 2 that expresses your experience of being a mother. So we know the mothers are going to be in this line, probably.
Pride.
Watching.
Unconditional love.
Pause.
Ongoing.
Challenging.
Scared.
And I'll add protective for myself. Okay, here's the last word poem. Share one word or 2 that describes your experience of being mothered. Experience you received of being mothered.
Learning integrity.
Loved.
Unconditional love.
Encouraged.
Sheltered.
Taxi service.
Tough love.
Tough.
Supported.
Confusion.
Guided.
Okay, so 4 word poems. Okay, well, let's go on with the service. That's all I have.